you have sharps and flats. So I'm going to go ahead and write the definition down here. So a sharp is just when a note is a half step higher when you add it. So half step higher. And that's easy to remember because say you have an A and you add a sharp to it, a half step higher will just be A sharp. And so that's really easy to remember, just to add a sharp, and it goes up a half step. So let's go up here to our letters and think about what's a half step higher than A, and that would just be A sharp. And it's as easy as that. So from A to A sharp we have a half step, and from A sharp to B we have another half step, which means that if you have a half plus a half, that's going to give you a whole. So from A to B would actually be a whole step. Now, if we remember, there's certain notes that don't have anything between them. So between B and C, there is no sharp there. So remember, there's nothing between B and C here when we're just doing half steps, which means that you go from A to A sharp, half step. A sharp to B, half step. B to C would be half step. C to C sharp, another half step, which makes C to D a whole step. And it's as easy as that. So each time you add a half step to a note, you just put a sharp in front of or after it, and it will be a half step higher. It's as simple as that. So after D, we'll have D sharp. And again, after E, it goes straight to F. So nothing between E and F, and then F sharp. After F goes to G, and then G sharp. After G, and so you end up having A, half step higher would be A sharp, half step higher would be B, half step higher would be C, half step higher would be C sharp, half step higher would be D, half step higher than that is D sharp, and then we go straight to E, and then to F, and then to F sharp, and then to G, and then to G sharp, and that's where it gets a little bit tricky because then we start back on A. And I'll write it up here one more time just so we can have 2 times all the way through to make sure you know that it just keeps going. And so after B, nothing but a C there. After C is C sharp. After D would be D sharp. After E, nothing. After F, F sharp. After G, G sharp. And then we start back on A. And it's that easy. Alright, so there's all your half steps from A to A. That's 2 whole octaves. So 1 octave would just basically be from the letter you start on to the same letter. And then so the second octave would be from the same letter down to this letter. So what I've written here is actually 2 octaves. And so an octave, all that really means is that you're going from one letter to the same letter. And you can use half steps, and we call that the chromatic scale. And so basically the term chromatic just means all the half steps between one note and whatever note you're trying to go to. So that's how sharps work. Now down here I'll write what a flat is. F-L-A-T. And it kind of looks like a lowercase b, but it has a little point on the bottom. halfway lower than B is B flat. Now we already know from A to B is a whole step, so halfway lower than that would be a B flat because it's half step lower than B. So if half step higher than A is A sharp, and a half step lower than B is B flat, then A sharp and B flat are the same thing. And it's just really easy to see if you look at the chart here that I wrote. And you can just add up what's between A and B here. That would be an A sharp. And what's between A and B here, that is a B flat. So if you ever get confused, you can look at your chart here and just see what note comes between the A and the B. And just like up here, nothing between B and the C. So there's going to be no sharp or flat in between these two notes. And for those of you who remember, B sharp and C flat do actually exist, but we won't go into that on this video. We'll talk about that in person if you need a little extra help on that, for those of you who just want to go that extra step. So a half step higher than C would be C sharp. So if this is exactly halfway down and half step lower, then the next note up would be D, so D flat would be half step lower than D. So in between C and D, we have D flat. So if you look up here, between C and D, that would be a C sharp. If you look in between here, in between C and D, it would be D flat. So C sharp and D flat are the same note, exactly. And then we have nothing between E and F. That easy, but we do have something between D and E. So between D and E, we have a D sharp, which you can see easily up here. And half step lower than this note here would be E flat. So in between D and E, we have E flat here. In between D and E here, we have a D sharp here. So D sharp and E flat are the exact same thing. In between E and F, we have nothing. Half step lower than G would be G flat. If you look right here, where I'm moving the mouse, we have F to G would be a whole step. Halfway there would be G flat. F to G up here would be a whole step. F to G, F to F sharp would be a half step. So F sharp and G flat are the same thing. Now this is where it really gets tricky, because you're going from G and starting over with A. So it sounds kind of weird to think that halfway there would be G sharp. That makes sense because it's a little higher than G, but then a little lower than A would be A flat. So even though those two letters are nowhere close to each other in the alphabet, if you look at the chart here, G and A, G sharp is right in between. G and A flat's right in between. So G sharp and A flat are the exact same thing. And we'll just go ahead and do this one more time so you'll have it. Two letters, two octaves through. So B flat would be there. Nothing between B and C. D flat there between C and D. So if you look up here between C and D, you'll see that there's a C sharp. In between C and D here is a D flat. So you can see the C sharp and D flat are the same thing. E flat would go here. Between D and E, there's an E flat. Between D and E, there's a D sharp. So D sharp and E flat are the same thing. Between E and F, nothing. G flat. In between F and G. F sharp in between F and G. And then an A flat between G and A. And a G sharp between G and A. And that gives you all of your half steps. Now if you look down here, I've written in sharp, half step higher, flat, half step lower. You might want to go back and pause the video when you're watching it. I'm going to go ahead and post it onto our channel and put it on Schoology. That way you can actually watch and see what's going on and take notes and put it on your own sheet of paper. And that way they're kind of sitting next to you as you're trying to play and trying to figure out what all these notes are on your own instrument. Now, speaking of your own instrument, let's take a look at your strings real quick. And I will write down a go. Just like that. You guys can see where your fingers go. There's the same thing about the viola. And that's what your finger positions look like here. And then you have cello. And then we have bass. Alright, and over here on the side, I'll write what each instrument is, so you'll understand it. So that's guitar, this is violin, this is viola, this is cello, and this is bass. So if you look on each instrument, they all kind of work exactly the same, because anytime there's a string, all the strings are going to work the same way. So on a guitar, open would just be whatever string we're going to start on, and every single instrument has a G. So let's just go with the G string. So for every single one of the examples here, open G will just be G. All of these strings are going to be the G string. So if you don't push anything down at all on a G, we call that open G, and it's just going to be a G that comes out. And that's easy enough to remember. On guitar, you basically just have fret numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we'll just go to 5 frets. On violin, you have finger positions on all your tape, and it's going to be first position for all these. We talked about positions a little bit, so you probably know what that means. So it's going to be lower one is going to be your first piece of tape we put on there. If you have 5 pieces of tape, and probably in between the nut and the first piece of tape, if you only have 3 pieces of tape, depending on how we did it, you have first finger, and we have lower 2, and then 2, and then 3, and then high 3, which we've always called raised 3. I've heard it both ways. So H3 or R3, and most of our music says H3, so I'm just going to go with that. Viola, the exact same thing, lower 1, and then 1, lower 2, and then 2, 3, and then high 3. So high 3 goes right here at the end. And there is a 4th finger. Some classes have talked about that. We're not going to do that on here, just so they'll all line up here. Cello, lower 1, 1, already know that B sharp is the same thing as C, but for the sake of this, let's keep it easy and call the next thing C. So if we go back down to here, guitar, 5th fret would be C, violin, 3rd finger C, viola, 3rd finger C, cello, 4th finger. There it is. Half step higher than C, we already know. C sharp. C sharp on viola. And C sharp on cello. So there you have it. Here's your first 5 frets on the guitar. If you wanted to add one more, you can just call that number 6. 6th fret is C sharp, and you can keep on going. So 7th fret would be D, 8th fret would be D sharp, 9th fret would be E, 10th fret would be F, 11th fret would be F sharp, and 12th fret, if you look on your guitar, you have 2 dots on your 12th fret, and it takes you back to G. So if you end up on the same note you started on and get to those 2 dots, then you know you've counted them up right. And that's a quick and easy guide to figuring out how to follow your notes on every single string. And hopefully you can go back and watch this. If you have any questions, just message me and let me know, and I'll try to get back to you. And I hope that helped.